Across Scotland, falling as snow over the higher ground, winds easing from the north and west, but still blustery in the east, highs of 8 degrees in Edinburgh.
And Northern Ireland will also be largely dry with some sunny spells across the province, but those gusty winds are continuing. Not as strong as they have been overnight, that's the good news. The highs there of 10 Celsius.
And then it will be...
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate.
From all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for...
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Mercy Muroki on your TV and on your radio, and we're here all the way through until midday with a show to kickstart your week.
Yes, indeed. Make sure you get in touch as well with your views. We'd love to hear them. gbviews@gbnews.uk is the email, and we'll be getting to those throughout the show. But first, let's give you the latest news.
A very good morning to you. It's 10 o'clock. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date on GB News. Now, Boris Johnson's going to meet with his cabinet this morning before updating MPs on his blueprint for living with COVID. The Prime Minister says scrapping the requirement to self-isolate in England will bring the country towards a return to normality and finally give people back their freedom. It's expected that all remaining domestic COVID regulations that restrict public freedoms will end this week. The British Medical Association says scrapping mandatory self-isolation is an odd decision. Virologist Dr. Chris Smith says even without the legal restrictions, people should be encouraged to use common sense.
At the end of the day, if you've got gastroenteritis and norovirus, you generally don't go to work. You don't send your kid to nursery. There's no legal framework that says if you do, you're going to get prosecuted. That's what they're removing, the legal framework. But hopefully the learning, the common sense, the ability to make decisions and risk assess that we've actually become pretty good at doing over the course of the pandemic, that remains in play.
Union leaders have criticised potential government plans to charge for COVID tests, calling it an act of madness. The TUC is urging the Prime Minister to put public health first ahead of internal public party politics. Well, they claim it will disproportionately hit frontline and low-paid workers during a time when the cost of living is on the rise. The Business Minister, Paul Scully, says the £2 billion per month government spend on COVID tests could be better used. In other news now, transport networks across parts of the UK are suffering further delays as Storm Franklin now hits the country. Yellow weather warnings are in place for England, Wales and the west of Scotland. The Met Office had issued an amber weather warning for Northern Ireland, which has since been downgraded. Some train operators have asked passengers not to travel because of high winds and flooding. Environment agencies have also issued hundreds of alerts for flooding across the UK. A lorry set on fire on the motorway when high winds caused it to crash. Lancashire police confirmed the HGV hit a bridge and burst into flames on the M6. Well, the driver escaped and is being assessed at hospital. In international news now, the US President Joe Biden has agreed in principle to talks with Vladimir Putin as long as Russia holds off on any plans to invade Ukraine. The Kremlin says the two leaders could meet in person or talk on the phone, but there are no concrete plans yet. The Prime Minister Boris Johnson says this week will be crucial for democracy. Associate Fellow with the Russia Eurasia programme at Chatham House, Samantha de Bendon, stressed the importance of talks between Russia and the West.
For any more talks to be effective, the format of the talks will have to be widened to have the US included, maybe even the UK, which has been notably absent from the high-level discussions here. Talks would probably have to be accompanied by an agreement for some kind of independent peacekeeping force, whether this is in a UN peacekeeping force or an OSCE peacekeeping force.
Australia welcomes tourists back today after nearly 2 years. Vaccinated travellers can travel to the country after some of the world's strictest pandemic measures have been lifted. Australian citizens and international students were allowed to return down under from November last year, but most tourists had to wait. The travel editor at The Independent, Simon Calder, says there were no tourists on his flight to Sydney and that paperwork might be putting people off visiting.
I had to fill in an incredibly complicated form. I had to be double jabbed. I had to take a lateral flow test in the 24 hours before getting on board. Really tough stuff. They desperately need us back. It's a question of whether, having had that big keep out sign for a couple of years, people have kind of forgotten about Australia.
There is a new drive to help uncover Britain's working class history. Historic England have announced that local communities can apply for grants of up to £25,000 to fund research. Well, the aim is to uncover everyday history in places like railways, council estates and pubs. The project is the first of a series planned for the next 3 years, exploring the diversity of England's heritage. You are now up to date here on GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's head back to the point.
Well, good morning. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Mercy Muroki, and Patrick Christys on your TV, radio and online. We're here till midday with a show full of all of today's big stories, lots of discussion and our opinions as well. So here's what's on the menu.
Yes, well, the Queen has tested positive for coronavirus at the age of 95. She's apparently only exhibiting mild cold-like symptoms as she isolates at Windsor Castle. Obviously, we wish her a speedy recovery. Our South East of England reporter Ellie Costello will join us live from outside the gates of the castle.
Yes, and Home Secretary Priti Patel has written to all 650 MPs urging them to support her controversial police, crime and sentencing and courts bill. But is the revised bill good enough to pass through Parliament this time round? We'll discuss.
And finally, we've already had Storm Dudley and Storm Eunice this week, but is the UK ready for Storm Franklin? Well, no, we're not ready, are we?
No.
We're never ready. It's a bit windy, so we better stop all the trains. Anyway, yellow and amber weather warnings are already in place, as well as danger to life flooding warnings. Our regional reporters in Hertfordshire and Northern Ireland will be following this storm.
Yes, we have all of that coming up and much more as well across the next 2 hours. And you can get in touch with your views as usual on our email gbviews@gbnews.uk. The email there on the screen for our viewers. But first, Patrick gives his views on the NHS Trust funding rainbow crossings.
NHS trusts have wasted tens of thousands of pounds worth of taxpayers' cash on LGBT-friendly rainbow pedestrian crossings. In yet another epic symbol of virtue signalling nonsense, several hospital trusts saw fit to splurge our money on rainbows instead of healthcare. Salisbury NHS Foundation Trust in Wiltshire spent £11,000 on 4 rainbow crossings, And South West Yorkshire paid £5,000 for 9 crossings. More than 20 trusts have spent 46 grand on the rainbow crossings since 2019. Sherwood Forest Hospital's NHS Trust in Nottinghamshire spent 2,780 repainting a crossing in 2021 and said, get this, it was the latest addition to the Trust's equality, diversity and inclusivity agenda. What about the Saving Lives agenda? However, there was a rare glimmer of actual common sense. North Cumbria Integrated Care NHS Foundation Trust showed a bit of this common sense when it said it chose not to install the rainbow crossings because they were, quote, not deemed value for money. Well, absolutely right. How can a rainbow crossing be considered a good use of public money? I don't imagine that a gay man having a heart attack will feel any better as a result of seeing the rainbow flag splashed across the road as he's wheeled into hospital, do you? And I don't know whether or not to be more angry about this one. Belfast Health and Social Care Trust spent £2,824 on 2 rainbow crossings in the past year, but now both of them have been removed. So they paid to paint them on, and presumably we paid to have them removed as well. We keep hearing about how the NHS is under-resourced, but I tell you who's not under-resourced. The NHS Trust Chiefs. New official figures show the health service has an astonishing 2,788 very senior managers across all trusts, earning at least £110,000 a year, costing the taxpayer £395 million every year. Professor Clive Kay, Chief Exec of King's College Hospital Foundation Trust, which runs 3 sites in South London and Kent, earned from £295,000 to £300,000 in 2019-20. The Trust had £500 million of debt written off by the government. Then there's Dr Bruno Holthoff, Chief of Oxford University Hospitals NHS Foundation Trust. They're all a mouthful, these, aren't they? Rated by the CQC as requiring improvement. Now, he earned around 300 grand a year as well, including £8,000 taxable expenses. The top 10 chiefs' pay make uncomfortable reading compared to NHS lower-paid workers, including nurses. They earn around 33 grand. Porters and cleaners can earn as little as 19,000. And on top of all that expenditure, as far as I can tell, our bang average chiefs, NHS bosses have approved spending of up to £42 million on management consultants to teach them how to reduce waiting times. Well, I've got an idea. Stop focusing on rainbow road crossings and devote all your energy to patient care. Shockingly, some of these rainbows were actually painted during the pandemic, so that's when the NHS was at its most overstretched. I don't really understand all this virtue signalling nonsense. It appears to me that companies, businesses and organisations feel as though unless they visibly display a rainbow, then people must think they're homophobic. If they don't take the knee, then they must be racist. Well, why can't we all just start by assuming that we're not all homophobic and racist? There are record waiting lists for NHS treatment. People are dying while they wait for healthcare. And we have NHS staff being paid 6-figure sums to think about rainbows. It turns out there are some rainbows with a pot of gold at the end of them. In my opinion, NHS Trust should not be spending a penny of our cash on virtue signalling. They're wasting our money while people are dying on their watch. Yeah, I mean, it obviously winds me up quite a lot.
Yes, I mean, and it should do, rightly so, because we are told repeatedly, aren't we, that, you know, the NHS is short on cash.
Yeah.
I don't think the nurses and doctors and other staff who were not getting a pay rise have had effectively a pay cut, you know, in real terms, over the last couple of decades. Yeah. I don't think they would particularly think this is a good use of money. And in a time where we're being asked to fork out more than we ever have been, when we're getting this tax, this national insurance rise, which we are being told is specifically to fund health and social care because there's not enough money in the system, that is the government line. Yeah. I of course, things like this shouldn't really be on the it's not that they're at the top of the agenda, but they're certainly somewhere on the agenda because somebody's making the decision to go ahead with it.
It's everywhere now, this rainbow flag business. They're doing it in local councils as well. When I get off the train here at Paddington, there's little carts that people drive around. The staff, they're all got rainbow flags all over them. I'm not saying like that there's anything wrong in terms of the actual rainbow flag, and it's obviously great that we, to show solidarity with the LGBTQ+ community and all of that. But like, it is everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, my issue, I don't care what anybody does with their private land. If they want to paint their car bright, you know, in a bright rainbow flag, that's up to them. What I care about is taxpayers' money and public money being used for these sorts of courses. If it's a private company, they can crack on, they can get on with whatever they want. But public money, it's a different question, I think.
Absolutely. Just very quickly, Jeffrey's been in touch. I think it's an important comment there, thank you. Gay people, of which I am one, he says, do not want rainbow crossings anywhere. It's not our community's idea. It makes us look stupid. There you go. That's Jeffrey's view. Get in touch. GBViews at gbnews.uk.
Yes, but now the Queen has tested positive for COVID over the weekend, but is determined to keep working through her infection. That's according to royal sources. The 95-year-old monarch wants to fulfil a number of remote commitments from Windsor Castle, where she is currently isolating.
Yeah, she's apparently only experiencing mild cold-like symptoms at this stage. So our reporter, Ellie Costello, is outside Windsor Castle. Yes, good morning, Ellie. How are you doing? What's the latest then? What do we know?
Hi, Patrick and Mercy. Well, we know that the Queen is inside those castle walls, somewhere recovering from coronavirus. She is isolating, but will continue with light duties. We saw yesterday she congratulated Team GB's curling team for winning gold at the Olympics. So those are the kinds of light duties that we are talking about. In the last week, she was meeting with ambassadors via video link, as she has done a lot throughout the pandemic. So she will continue to work from home in that sense. But this news will be very shocking to many people. It will cause a lot of concern as well, because this is a 95-year-old woman, almost 96 years old, who had poor health before Christmas. So many people will be rightly worried and rightly concerned, but the palace doesn't want us to feel that way based on the statement that they released around lunchtime yesterday. Let me share a little bit with that with you now. It says the Queen is experiencing mild cold-like symptoms, but will continue light duties at Windsor over the coming week. And it goes on to say she will continue to receive medical attention and will follow all of the appropriate guidelines. And Patrick and Mercy, this was a really rare statement from the palace. It's very, very rare that we hear anything about the private medical condition of the Queen. So I think this was quite intentional to ease panic and let us know that those symptoms are mild and she will continue to keep working. And indeed, there has been so much effort put into keeping the Queen safe throughout the pandemic. She has spent a lot of time here at Windsor Castle in the past 2 years in a bubble which was dubbed HMS Bubble, and it was about 20 members of staff that's surrounding the Queen for the past 2 years in order to keep her safe. But in the past week, many of those in HMS Bubble have tested positive, as has the son of the Queen, Prince Charles, the heir to the throne. He tested positive on the 10th of February. That was just 2 days after he met with his mother. And we also know that his wife, the Duchess of Cornwall, has tested positive as well. She too is isolating. This certainly was circulating in the royal household, and royal sources have told me that the Queen was aware that she was going to get coronavirus at some point and is very much taking it in her stride. And they also told me that yesterday she was watching her horse at the Newbury races from the television in Windsor Castle. So that's some sense of hope that this isn't affecting her too badly. But I think that statement was true British in style. It was a very keep calm and carry on attitude from the palace. It's very much business as usual for the Queen. So of course there will be concern because of the monarch's age, because of her poor health before Christmas, but the palace wants us to know that she's in the best possible place, she's receiving the best possible care, and they're very much looking forward to her Jubilee celebrations in June.
That report live from Windsor Castle, and as we say, we of course wish her all the best, and it's great to see that she is well enough at the moment to carry on with her duties at least. But now Grant Harold is a former butler to Prince Charles and Prince William and Harry as well, and he joins us now. Good morning, thank you for joining us. It's encouraging somewhat, isn't it, to hear that the Queen is still in good enough spirits to continue with working remotely?
Good morning, Mercy. Good morning, Patrick. Thank you for having me on. Absolutely. I mean, this is the positive part of the Queen, that she's not somebody that, when she is ill, that wants to stay in bed and not do things. She's very active. She wants to carry on. So she'll probably find this really frustrating. She's aware that COVID, so many people have obviously had it. Sadly, a lot of us have lost loved ones because of it. She's aware of that, and I think she will have that in her mind, that it can obviously go either way, but at the same time, at the moment, it's mild symptoms, thankfully, and she's going to probably just carry on as normal, but doing these light duties.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and obviously we all wish her well. Thankfully, it does appear as though she's only got mild symptoms. I mean, this will be a concern, though, won't it, for other members of the royal family? You know Prince Charles incredibly well, I would imagine. How do you think he'll be feeling at the moment?
I think with all the family, they're all going to be concerned because they're a close family. And I think there will be a lot of concern for the Queen. A few people have obviously been kind of saying, do I think that it's possible that Prince Charles or the Duchess obviously maybe pass this on? And it's difficult to say because COVID, as we know, anyone can get it. I mean, there's a lot of people that work at Windsor Castle. There's a lot of people around the Queen. So it is possible that she could get it from anywhere. So it's difficult to say where she would have got it. But yes, they will be very concerned because they want to make sure that she's okay. And you also got to remember the anniversary of the death of Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, that's just around the corner. That's in the next couple of months. So I think, this is supposed to be hopefully a positive year for the Queen. We've got the Platinum Jubilee coming up, and I think that's what she will be wanting to focus on and just carry on with her duties.
And you mentioned that there'll be that anniversary in a couple of months, which of course is very sad, especially given she couldn't have a proper sort of send-off for him. We saw those pictures of her sitting on her own, didn't we? But there is a big positive, isn't there, this year with those Jubilee celebrations. I mean, what are you expecting of this year? Do you think it is going to be the biggest royal celebration this country has ever seen?
I think so. I think we're going to, all the stops are going to be pulled out. I think they're going to make sure this is one of the biggest celebrations, because the reality is, I mean, I pray, like with everyone else, that the Queen possibly can go on as long as her mother. But I think this will be one of the largest big celebrations of this kind. And with all the things that have been planned, you've obviously got the traditional pageants. We've got the Thanksgiving service, party at the palace again. So you've got all these traditional celebrations, which I think is important. And the beacons, I actually read that what's unusual is all the Commonwealth countries, the cities are going to be having the beacons as well as across the country, which is traditional, starting off at Buckingham Palace. So I think that all of us, the Commonwealth as well, we're going to put on an amazing party, because it could be the last big party. So I think this one has to be the best of all of them. But it will also be a difficult one for the Queen, again, losing Prince Philip, and he's not going to be outside for this very special occasion.
Absolutely. Now, I just wanted to ask you a little bit about Princes William and Harry. Again, you obviously know them very, very well. Obviously, there's a rift there, I think, isn't there, to say the least. But there seems to be a bit of division in their response to Camilla. Now, obviously, Camilla's been announced as being Queen or whatever. She's going to be Queen when Charles ascends to the throne. And Harry has remained very, very tight-lipped about that. What was their relationship like, Harry and Camilla?
Very close. I mean, both the princes and the Duchess all got on very well, without any question. I think what I find slightly confusing from my point of view, even though at one point they said Princess Consort, as I'm sure you're both aware, it takes an act of Parliament to change that, to suddenly make it that she would be Princess Consort, because as the wife of a king, she's automatically the Queen Consort. And that law wasn't changed. And I think that everyone in the household is aware of that, even though it's possible they could have changed it, because they're obviously looking at public opinion, trying to see what the public feel about that. And obviously people have taken to the Duchess. So what I'm trying to say is I don't think it would have come as a huge shock to the princes, when this was actually announced. So I think possibly he's just keeping his own counsel. I think now he's stepped back from being a senior member of the royal family, it's possible we'll see in the future that he's less likely to comment on these kind of things, possibly.
Absolutely. Well, look, thank you very, very much. I think it's the first time I've had you on the show, but I really hope it's not the last, Grant. Grant Harold there, of course.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome. He's a former butler to Charles and, of course, the princes as well. The not-so-young princes.
Well, yeah, he might not be commenting on that, but he seems to want to comment on just about everything else. Prince Harry, doesn't he? So I don't think he has an issue with voicing his opinion half the time.
He's painting a rainbow crossing outside an NHS trust.
As we speak. After the break, Home Secretary Preeti Patel is attempting to pass her controversial police crime sentencing and courts bill through Parliament again. We'll look more into this after this weather.
Yes, well, looking ahead to today's weather in the UK is looking gradually calmer as Storm Franklin moves away, allowing the winds to ease. Let's take a look at the details, shall we? It'll be looking bright across southwest England by lunchtime, but still very windy with gales over the hills and around the coast. The odd shower is possible as well, but temperatures are climbing into double figures. Showers will be a little bit more frequent across the southeast of England and the London area. Gusty winds here too will make it feel colder than the numbers suggest. Gales around the coast and over the higher ground of Wales will slowly ease as well. Some sunshine developing, but perhaps the odd sharp shower as well. A mixed morning for the Midlands with sunny spells and a few showers. It will be very windy here as Storm Franklin clears through, and temperatures will climb to 10 degrees Celsius by midday. It's tropical. Plenty of sunny spells for northern England, but the wind is still strong in the west. A few showers are possible as well, but most places will stay dry. Temperatures gradually staying in single figures. Scattered showers will continue across Scotland, which will fall as snow over the higher ground. Winds easing from the north and west, but it's still blustery in the east. Highs of 8 degrees Celsius in Edinburgh. And over we go now to Northern Ireland, which will also be largely dry, with some sunny spells across the region. Gusty winds continuing, but not as strong as they were overnight. Highs of 10 degrees Celsius. Largely dry through the rest of the day across the UK, but rain moving back into the west by the evening. And that is how the weather is shaping up for the rest of the day.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning. It's just going 10:26, and this is To The Point with me, Mercy Muroki, and Patrick Christys on GB News. We're live on your TV, radio, and online.
Yes, now Home Secretary Preeti Patel has written to all 650 MPs to urge them to back the police crime sentencing and courts bill before it returns to the Commons next week. She writes that too many criminals are getting off with light sentences while the bill is in limbo.
Yes, well, the bill was defeated in the House of Lords last month after controversial measures to counter protests were rejected. Well, the Home Office have since revised the bill and will attempt to pass it again. Mark Johnson is Legal and Policy Officer for Big Brother Watch, which is a British civil liberties and privacy campaigning organisation. He joins us this morning. Good morning, Mark. My view of this bill is that the sentencing part is positive because it actually increases sentences for a whole host of violent offences. But the bill does have some problems. Can you just explain to us what the controversies are?
Well, in that sentencing aspect of the bill, which you mentioned there, I mean, quite frankly, it's really an assault on the right to protest. The bill gives the state the power to clamp down on protests which are deemed to be too noisy. There's a crackdown on one-person protests, and protests which might block vehicles in and around Parliament Square could actually be banned under the new law. So you're talking about, Brexit marches, anti-lockdown marches, a whole range of different demonstrations and assemblies. And that's the reason that when the bill is back in the House of Commons next week, MPs must accept the changes that the Lords made. And
what changes have been made?
So there were, as you mentioned previously, there were 14 amendments, and quite a large number of those amendments were defeats in the protest section. The government had tried to introduce a large number of really last-minute amendments to the bill, trying to railroad in new kind of stop-and-search powers, trying to stop and search protesters, and even these new concept of protest banning orders. They've actually been rejected outright. They were rejected outright by the Lords. But also, the Lords also took out some of those measures that I mentioned previously. So the noisy protest measure, and also the one-person protest measure as well. So they will come back to the Commons next week, and that's what MPs really need to accept.
Yeah, there were elements, as you've correctly said there, that were troubling for me, like the noise element of it. I think by definition, it's not really a protest if it's silent, is it? I mean, you want the people inside the House of Commons to be able to hear what you're shouting about. That's the point of it. And there were elements of it there, I think, that I did find troubling. Do you think there was something sinister about the initial draft, as it were? Because do you think that this was a push towards the potential quite draconian rules, really?
Well, we saw what repressive anti-protest laws looked during the COVID lockdowns. It's pretty ugly. I mean, we saw it with the Sarah Everard vigil, and the scenes were very unpleasant. And I don't know if it's the fact that the government perhaps want to hold on to some of that power. I'm not entirely sure. But what's clear is that this bill, as it stands still, even with the Lords' amendments, is a danger to freedom in the UK.
Can you just... that public opinion generally is when we had really disruptive protests, whether that was by Extinction Rebellion, whether that was by Insulate Britain, it did come at a huge cost to not only the economy, but actually people's lives, because in some cases they were blocking people from accessing healthcare. So do you at least accept that the public do want something to be done when it comes to a protest that are disrupting ordinary people in a severe way trying to go about their daily lives?
I do understand the frustrations there for sure, but what you have to look at is that there's really quite a large existing body of law which covers quite a lot of the behaviour that the government have cited when they've brought in this legislation. But really at the sharp end, what this is going to do is going to have a huge amount of damage to protest rights in the UK. And this is a government that talk a very good game on freedom of expression. Oliver Dowden was in America last week talking about, cancel culture and the censoriousness of it, but simultaneously making it harder for citizens to have their voices heard on Britain's streets. So we have to be really careful about definitions, and actually quite a lot of the kind of disruptive stuff that you mentioned there is actually covered by existing law.
Yeah, well, look, thank you very, very much for that. Mark Johnson there, of course, Legal and Policy Officer for Big Brother Watch, which is, of course, a British civil liberties and privacy campaign organisation. Thank you very much for joining us on the show. Interesting stuff, this, Bill, because you rightly identified there about insulate prisoners, I now call them. And these were massive issues. So when it comes to things like that, I want the police to be able to just,
effectively
unglue them as quickly as possible and, cart them off to prison. But that's because I think that they're annoying and I don't agree with their cause. But then I suppose if it was something that I really did believe in and did agree with, I would say, well, that's a bit draconian, isn't it? So it's a fine balance, I think.
Yeah. There is, of course, you always support your own cause, won't you? So you'll support the tactics of your own side. But, I don't think there's any excuse to be disrupting people from accessing healthcare, which was the case in some instances. I do think there's a danger of the bill in its entirety getting a bad rap, because it does include something I've been calling for a long time, which is stronger sentences for people who kill children, for example. It's increasing the mandatory sentence for child abuse offences. It's introducing Harper's Law to ensure people who kill medical professionals and police officers,
Yes.
emergency respondents, do get tougher sentences. So it does have all these other features, which I think are actually very plaudable.
Yeah, 100%. Where do you stand on this? GBViews, GBnews.uk. We've already had someone get in touch, actually, Linda, saying, just look at what's happening in Canada. MPs have to vote against it. And it is that question, isn't it, of being open to abuse and definitions, right? So what's going on in Canada, you know, it turns out it's very easy for Justin Trudeau to bracket you as a terrorist, right, and a national security threat. In fact, it basically just depends on whether or not he thinks you are or whether or not he says that you are. And then that allows these rules to freeze your bank accounts and this, that and the other. And so I suppose it is that question of the creeping hand of the state, isn't it? But at the same time, it's a tricky one because a lot of people, like we do regularly, we call for tougher law and order. So it is that balance. Where are you on this at home? GBViews at gbnews.uk.
Yes, get in touch. Well, after the break, though, Storm Franklin is heading our way and will be the third storm to batter the UK in just a week. Our East of England and Northern Ireland reporters will give you the latest after a look at this morning's news.
Good morning, it's 10:33. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date on GB News. Boris Johnson will meet his cabinet this morning before updating MPs on his blueprint for living with coronavirus. It's expected that all remaining domestic COVID regulations will end this week in England. The Prime Minister says scrapping the requirement to self-isolate will bring the country towards a return to normality. Union leaders have criticised potential government plans to charge for COVID tests, calling it an act of madness. The TUC is urging the Prime Minister to put public health first ahead of internal party politics. They claim it will disproportionately hit frontline and low-paid workers during a time when the cost of living is on the rise. In other news now, transport networks across parts of the UK are suffering further delays as Storm Franklin now hits the country. Yellow weather warnings are in place across most of the UK. Some train operators have asked passengers not to travel because of high winds and flooding. Environment agencies have also issued hundreds of alerts for flooding across the UK. In international news, the US President Joe Biden has agreed in principle to talks with Vladimir Putin as long as Russia holds off on any plans to invade Ukraine. The Kremlin says the two leaders can meet in person or talk on the phone, but there are no concrete plans in place yet. Well, the Prime Minister Boris Johnson says this week will be crucial for democracy. Donald Trump has launched a new social media app. It marks a potential return to the online world for the former US president after being banned from several platforms. He was accused of posting messages inciting violence following the attack on the US Capitol in January last year. Well, the Truth Social app is now available online. You're up to date here on GB News. We're on your TV, online and DAB Plus radio. Shortly, we'll be back to the point.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning. It's just gone 10:37 and this is To The Point with Patrick Christys and me, Mercy Muroki, on GB News, live on your TV, radio and online.
Now, we've already had two storms this week in Storm Dudley and Storm Eunice, but now Storm Franklin is here, causing even more power cuts, transport disruptions, and I can vouch for that as well, because what's going on at the moment with Great Western Railways is an absolute disgrace. I have to wait for 45 minutes for a train because it's a little bit windy. Anyway, and also apparently there's flooding. Right, okay. Well, the Met Office has issued an amber wind warning for Northern Ireland, while danger to life flood warnings have also been issued in Greater Manchester.
Yes, well, a record 1.4 million homes were left without power as a result of Storm Eunice. So how much worse exactly is it going to get? Well, our Northern Ireland reporter, Doogie Beattie, joins us now to discuss the latest. Doogie, good morning. You're in Northern Ireland, I believe, right now. How has it been over there?
Well, good morning and welcome to Donaghadee. I'm on the east coast. Just about 15 miles behind me in this stretch of water is Port Patrick in Scotland. I've actually crossed that in an open boat many years ago, and this morning you would definitely not be crossing it. 80-mile-an-hour winds battered Northern Ireland last night. The storm made land in the west of the province just after midnight. The worst damage has been in Tyrone, Fermanagh and Derry, three counties that got, well, they tend to get power outages and so forth when this happens. The electricity service, it must be said, are very, very quick at getting supplies back on. Early this morning there was up to 10,000 homes without power. There's now about 4,500 out, but they are trying to address that situation as they go along. Northern Ireland got away with the last two storms. They definitely are not getting away with it this time.
No, I mean, it's really is extreme weather where you are. I mean, I know I was making light of it around my neck of the woods. That's because, there's very little wind. But, I mean, it's a completely different story over where you are. I mean, what's the general mood like? Are people just hunkering down and hoping for it to all pass?
Well, I said this before, the Scots and the Irish are well used to storms hitting them at this time of the year, so they've took it pretty much as just get on with life as it goes. I think the biggest warning I was saying this morning is with these storms coming like this, it will create problems for trees coming down in and around March. The old saying, March in like a lion, out like a lamb, or in like a lamb, out like a lion. The trees are moving that much in the wind. We will get a lot of floods happening now. That'll get in round the roots of those trees, and if we get snow or ice as we do in March, it will freeze, expand that, and those trees will come down, creating more problems in March.
Yes, and how much worse is it going to get, or actually has the worst of it passed now?
Well, we thought the worst of it had actually passed us about 3 hours ago when we came on air at 6 o'clock in the morning, but the winds have started to pick up again quite hard. We've actually came to the back end of the pier here because when we stand on the road, the winds are that heavy. They are blowing us about substantially.
Yeah, look, Doogie, thank you very much for braving the elements for us as well, and make sure that you keep safe and try not to get hypothermia as well. I imagine there'd be some compensation involved there. Doogie Beattie, of course, there from Northern Ireland. Now, our East of England reporter, Amelia Harper, is also keeping watch for us in Letchworth in Hertfordshire. I believe we can be joined by her now, I think. Hey, there she is. Amelia, how's it going where you are?
Well, it is actually incredibly windy, and interestingly what Doogie was saying, the sense that I get here from standing in Hertfordshire is that the winds perhaps over the last half an hour have picked up, and I think the gusts perhaps have increased a little bit. We are in the middle of that Met Office yellow warning for wind. That's running until 1 p.m. We are going to and have been seeing travel disruption, some damage to buildings as well. But what is happening across England? Well, in the north, There has been flooding across parts of Greater Manchester as well as Yorkshire. In Rotherham, actually, their train station is actually underwater. You cannot see the tracks there. The emergency evacuation operations actually in Greater Manchester, in and around Didsbury, have now come to a close. They started last night over concerns about local rivers also bursting their banks. But it's not just in the north. Down south and also across the East Midlands, there are littered with flood warnings on the Environment Agency website as well. Also, we're having problems with power. 12,000 homes across the east and the southeast are still without power. Also, problems on the rail network as well. As I said, Rotherham, you can't even see the tracks for the train routes there. But 23 rail operators across the UK are affected in some way by this storm.
Amelia, thank you very much as well, again, for essentially standing out in the cold for us all day. It's very good of you to do that. Thank you very much. Amelia Harper there reporting from Letchworth. She mentioned there about Didsbury, Greater Manchester. Now, that's kind of close to my original neck of the woods. And it's the River Mersey that runs through there. I mean, that floods probably once every couple of years, and there's these massive school playing fields, for probably about half a mile's worth of school playing fields, completely underwater. You could sail a boat on it. I mean, now with 3 storms back to back to back, goodness only knows what's going to happen there, and those people are getting evacuated.
Yes, well, keep safe, everybody. Meanwhile, we're quite baking in here, which I'm personally enjoying, but not you in a suit and a tie. You're not enjoying it.
Double-breasted jacket as well. Oh, gone full Farage. Anyway, a student at Britain's biggest university is fearing being cancelled by uni officials after he expressed support for a former academic. Professor Joe Phoenix convened the Gender Critical Research Network at the Open University, but had to resign after an open letter said the network was hostile to the rights of trans people.
Yes, well, following that, second-year psychology student Sam Cowie then posted a statement of solidarity on social media in support of the professor on behalf of the university's Free Speech Society, which he founded. The Open University Student Association says the society's official affiliation efforts are on hold following the statement.
Well, Ben Jones is a case officer at the Free Speech Union who has been assisting the student. Ben joins us now. Thank you very much. No, just tell us more about what's happened here, please.
Morning. Well, we see quite a lot of ludicrous cases in our line of work, I'm afraid to say, and we've dealt with nearly 1,000 cases in the 2 years that we've been running for. In this case, Sam hasn't said anything offensive or outrageous or anything that would upset anybody. All he said is that he wants to stand up for and show support for academics, usually but not exclusively female academics, who have been bullied out of their jobs or faced harassment, or in some cases even we're aware of death threats, for their views on the trans issue. Now, we think people on all sides of this debate should be able to express their views without encountering that kind of response. And Sam agrees. He wants to set up a free speech society so that people can speak their minds and have these discussions openly. He wanted to set up this society to do that, and the Student Association, the Student Union, have blocked his efforts at every turn. So we've been helping him appeal that decision, and we'll be taking further action as well to help him.
And this all started when he basically said he supported a professor who had been forced to resign because she had set up this network, this research network called the Gender Critical Research Network. And then she was criticised for that. So what kind of ideas was she actually discussing that forced her to resign?
Well, it's all part of the broader debate we're seeing across society where feminists and I think many others now as well are raising concerns about women's spaces and issues like that. Now, as I said, we don't take a corporate position on that debate, but we do think that people on all sides should be able to express their views openly. And quite clearly, that's not happening at the moment, because if you do talk about concerns about women's spaces, women's prisons, hospitals, and changing rooms and so on, you will face a pretty horrible backlash. We've seen too many people forced out of their jobs or put in a position where they just cannot continue in their workplaces, and where universities and employers are not willing to support staff who speak out and object. So we're helping individuals like Sam who are just trying to create spaces where these discussions can happen. But it's quite clear we need a much broader cultural change. I think our whole societal approach to free speech has gone horribly wrong in the last 10 years. Particularly, I think we need to see young people approaching free speech as something that protects them, that protects everybody, that isn't just for certain groups of people. It is a fundamental human right and it isn't negotiable. And I think that needs to be affirmed much more strongly across our education system.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think there's a sad fact, though, at the moment, isn't there, which is that it's actually a lot of young people doing a lot of the cancelling, you know, and that's a real issue because, you know, by definition, if that gets any worse, then they'll bring that through with them for their lives, and goodness only knows what little cancel culture kids they'll end up having. But you know, how do we get that cultural change? Because, like I've said, it is a lot of people in their early 20s, in their teens, at school, who seem to be the ones cancelling everyone.
It is, but what's so inspiring about Sam's case is here we have a young undergraduate who is defending free speech, defending the right of people to disagree with each other in a reasonable way. So although I think the picture on the whole is not great at the moment, I think there are signs to be optimistic. I think there are people, including young people and students now, the Free Speech Champions programme, for instance, there are people fighting back against cancel culture. And I think there are an increasing number of young people who don't like coming to an institution which tells them you can't talk about this or that, and you must think these things, and if you don't, you're not going to have any friends and you're going to be in a lot of trouble with your university. So I think we are starting to see a pushback against that, and I hope that grows. The key thing that's happening at the moment is the Higher Education Freedom of Speech Bill. That's a piece of legislation that the Free Speech Union campaigned for. We'll be very pleased when that's on the statute books. But as I said, we do need a broader cultural change as well. The law will be extremely helpful. It's a critical piece of legislation, but we do need a broader cultural change, and that is going to take a long time to achieve. And I think by helping people like Sam, the Free Speech Union, is at the head of making that change happen. And we need to keep on helping people like Sam and many others.
Yeah, and interesting stuff. Well, look, thank you very, very much for joining us, really, and talking us through that. It's a shame that this issue isn't going to go away anytime soon, is it, Ben? But Theo, make sure you come back on shortly. Ben Jones there, of course, the Free Speech Union, who's been assisting this particular student. And it's an irony, isn't there? You call it the Open University. It's not very open, is it?
No, absolutely not. Well, no universities are at the moment. I remember at my first, one of my freshers' weeks in 2019, at the end, this was in my postgraduate degree. I'm not that young, but in my postgraduate degree, and it was a student fair, you know, the sort of freshers' fair that you go around and it's all the societies trying to advertise and rope students into their causes. And one student who was pro-Remain, cancel Brexit party, obviously saw me, decided to approach me thinking because I was an ethnic minority, I'd be a lefty, and that I would be wanting to cancel Brexit. And she was like, no, this was a white lady. And so she approached me and she was like, you know, join our party, Brexit's awful, isn't it? We're trying to cancel Brexit. And I just turned around to her and I said, no, actually, I think Brexit was a good idea.
And did she?
And she looked like she'd seen a ghost. Honestly, I've never seen somebody's colour flush out of their face.
No, but you can't think it's a good idea.
She didn't know what to say, honestly. She was just like, well, okay. And I just walked off.
Oh, well, there you go. There you go. Well, please speak your mind. You know what, you better do it that way. I know loads of people who are like shy Brexiteers. I'm sure we all know someone. They're at a dinner party, you know what I mean? And I know full well that they voted for Brexit. They've told me they voted for Brexit. They're actually, you know, very much in favour of it. And it goes around the table and someone's, you know, well, of course, you know, we all voted for Remain. And I was like, no, of course I did. Yeah, Remain, Brexit, ban Brexit. That's what I say.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not some staunch sort of Brexit advocate, but I just don't like the idea of people assuming what you voted. And I just think the whole Remain Brexit thing was so ridiculous looking back on it now, because, I mean, who cares if your friend or your family voted Brexit? It's just a constitutional question, in my view. And
people, like, stopped talking to relatives.
Yeah,
because they voted
insane.
for Brexit. It's just nuts. I mean, that's cancel culture, isn't it? Anyway, right, here are some of the headlines that you may well have missed if you've still got time for them after we waffled on. 31-year-old music entrepreneur and MBE recipient Jamal Edwards has sadly died at the age of 31.
Yes, he founded SBTV at the age of 15, which was an online media platform to discover emerging artists. He helped launch the careers of musicians Emily Sandé, Dave, Ed Sheeran and Jessie J, to name a few. He received an MBE at the age of 23 for his services to music and was a Prince's Trust ambassador as well. Well, in 2021, he set up Jamal Edwards Delve, which was a project that aimed to refurbish and reopen youth centres. And, of course, our condolences go to his family and loved ones. I was really shocked when I saw this news pop up on my phone yesterday on my notifications. I follow him quite on Instagram. He's always posting all the time, so he's very present on social media. And I actually did see him and spoke to him a few weeks ago as well.
Really?
So yeah, so I was involved in a project he works on, and so it's devastating. 31. As far the family statement at the moment says after a sudden illness. So of course we don't actually know what happened, but just 30. It just really hits home when somebody who's in your age bracket and who still has so much life left to live dies.
But it also shows, doesn't it, as well, that look, you never know what's around the corner. You never know what's going to come, and to try and make the most of what you've got. And he certainly did. I mean, he did an unbelievable amount of things. With his relatively short time on this earth, and I think it is a bit of a lesson to people, isn't it? Try and make the most of that time. I know it's not always. It's easier said than done, that isn't it? Because people do have real problems. But yeah, I think just try to make the most of it.
Yes, indeed. Well, in other news, bad news for some commuters because more than a dozen town councils are considering instituting a so-called motorist parking levy, dubbed a poll tax on wheels, while the schemes would charge city centre companies up to £1,000 a year for every parking space they have, raising concerns over workers' pay packets.
Yes, this is just more madness, isn't it? Councils have pushed the tax in order to reduce traffic and provide more funding for public transportation. No, it's not. It's to raise money. Anyway, Nottingham is the only town to have instituted this scheme so far, and data suggests that up to half of all costs have been passed on to staff. So, yet again, poorer in the name of the big green agenda, apart from it's not really about the big green agenda, is it? Yeah. Councils want more cash.
Yeah, I mean, how many more taxes can they come up with to tax everybody? Yeah, I think it's an endless list, and, I mean, it's going to be a real struggle, isn't it, for people who are already just about managing. We've been speaking about those, and I just think they need to just sort themselves out. Stop wasting public money for a start, and maybe then you won't be so cash-strapped. That's a good idea.
Well, they go on as well. The thing is, as well, they go, right, OK, look at these really polluted parts of our town or our city now. Look at the congestion. Right, you've slapped a cycle lane in there. There's constantly roadworks. So actually, there's a bottleneck now, isn't it? So the congestion is being caused a lot of the time by the measures that the council are actually putting in place. And then they go, well, we've got to charge you to drive into work every single day and this, that and the other thing. This is madness.
Yeah,
ambulances can't get through, traffic jams and stuff like this because they've slapped a cycle lane in there and something else over here. Anyway, sorry, I get very wound up about traffic.
Yes, and taxes. Now, the O2 Arena is set to reopen this week following the viral footage of Storm Eunice tearing the tented roof off the building. Dramatic photographs and videos appeared to show at least 6 sections of the roof, which measures around 1,200 feet. They were shredded up, as our viewers will be able to see. Those listening will not be able to see that, but I'm sure you would have seen those pictures over the weekend of basically a quarter of the roof ripped off the O2.
I had a pair of boxes that looked like that once.
That is vile.
Yeah, anyway. Fans feared that the venue could be closed for months as repairs take place. But a spokesman assured people that with tickets for upcoming shows that the venue would be open on Friday the 25th of February. Yeah, sorry. The boxes.
Now I have that image stuck in my head, sadly. Let's go to some of your views to get that horrible image out of my head. Rita here in Belfast says Harry is waiting to put his opinion of Camilla into his upcoming book. Maybe that's why he's so silent at the moment on everything else. He wants to have this sort of big tell-all moment when he eventually publishes his book at the end of the year.
Bated breath, Harry. I'm waiting with bated breath. Yes, I can hardly wait for your insightful commentary. Anyway, lots of people talking about cancel culture. I'm really bothered about the cancel culture mob. They're predominantly students. And woke liberal types who are using the internet to indoctrinate or cancel those who do have their brainwashed narrative. And there's no name on that one, but it's strong stuff.
Yes, absolutely. And Alan here says it's not. This is in relation to protesters. Well, the police crime sentencing and courts bill that Priti Patel is trying to push, people are criticising it, and not least the Lords, who've rejected it because they're saying it will actually diminish people's right to protest. Well, Alan in Sidcup gets in touch. He says, is it not the fact that you can make as much noise on a protest, but it's about excessive noise after a certain time that won't be allowed. It's similar to an annoying neighbour who constantly has loud music on after a certain time. So
all right, I've apologised about that, OK? I'll keep it down from now on.
So he's saying, basically, they're not going to stop them from protesting. It's just about that excess.
That's the thing. I think it's just that question, isn't it, of could these laws potentially be abused in the future? Could they be, used as excuses or justifications for things? Who defines what's too loud and when the appropriate time to stop doing it is? I get that. I get that the intent perhaps is maybe well-meaning. I don't know, but in reality, could it be abused going down the line?
Yeah, and there is a potential for that. I agree. But keep all your thoughts coming into us on our email, gbviews@gbnews.uk. We'll be back with more of today's top stories and plenty of your views after the break for the final hour.
Hello. Storm Franklin is clearing away, but we do still have a Met Office yellow warning in place until the early afternoon. Still very windy out there and still the potential for damaging gusts through the late morning, early afternoon. There is that storm system starting to ebb away and the isobars just slowly opening out. So the winds will continue to ease through the rest of today, but it's still going to be a very windy day. For many, it'll be bright out there this afternoon. Quite a bit of cloud over the Midlands, East Anglia through the early afternoon. A few showers likely here, but otherwise it is mostly dry and many places seeing sunny spells. But it is still windy. Those winds just continuing to ease down a little bit through the afternoon. Temperature-wise, double digits for many across England and Wales, and even further north, above average across Scotland. But obviously it doesn't feel that mild because it is still very windy. As the winds ease off further, we could see some pockets of frost across northeast Scotland. Turns quite chilly across eastern England overnight with clear skies, but the next set of weather fronts will move in from the west, bringing rain and drizzle, and eventually they'll start to lift the temperatures. So certainly in the west, we're well above freezing by dawn. But some more heavy rain and strong winds come into western Scotland in the morning. That rain will spread southwards, could be very heavy for a time across northwest England, North Wales, particularly through Tuesday morning's rush hour. That band of rain kind of eases off as it spreads southwards, so a spell of damp weather for the Midlands and then East Anglia in the southeast through the early afternoon before skies start to brighten and we see sunny spells. A few showers across western Scotland, in particular over the hills. There will be of snow here, but again, for many it turns quite bright, but still quite breezy in the afternoon. Through Tuesday evening, we'll see a few more of those showers coming into Northern Ireland, northwest England, particularly western Scotland, with more snow on the hills. Clearer spells further south, and the weather continuing to chop and change this week. It'll often be windy, but not as stormy. There'll be spells of rain, but also most of us will see some sunnier days as well. Goodbye.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Yes, well, good morning, everyone. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christys, and Mercy Muroki on your TV and on your radio and online, actually. We're here for another hour with loads of stories for you. The latest, including the latest on Ukraine as well.
Yes, and we're going to be speaking to a British expat in the country in just a short while. But make sure you get in touch with your views, as usual, on our email, gbviews@gbnews.uk, and we'll be getting to those throughout the final hour. But first, let's give you the latest news.
A very good morning to you. It's just coming up to 2 minutes past 11. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date today on GB News. Now, Boris Johnson's going to meet with his cabinet this morning before updating MPs on his blueprint for living with COVID. It is expected that all remaining domestic COVID regulations that restrict freedom will end this week in England. The Prime Minister says scrapping the requirement to self-isolate in England will bring the country towards a return to normality, and he says finally give people back their freedom. The British Medical Association say scrapping mandatory self-isolation is an odd decision. Virologist Dr. Chris Smith says even without legal restrictions, people should be encouraged to use common sense.
At the end of the day, if you've got gastroenteritis and norovirus, you generally don't go to work. You don't send your kid to nursery. There's no legal framework that says if you do, you're going to get prosecuted. That's what they're removing, the legal framework, but hopefully the learning, the common sense, the ability to make decisions and risk assess that we've actually become pretty good at doing over the course of the pandemic. That remains in play.
Union leaders have criticised potential government plans to charge for COVID tests, calling it an act of madness. The TUC is urging the Prime Minister to put public health first ahead of internal party politics. They claim it will disproportionately hit frontline and low-paid workers during a time when the cost of living is on the rise. The Business Minister, Paul Scully, says the £2 billion per month government spend on COVID tests could be better used. In other news now, transport networks across parts of the UK are suffering further delays as now Storm Franklin hits the country. Yellow weather warnings are in place for England, Wales and the west of Scotland. The Met Office had issued an amber warning for Northern Ireland, which has now been downgraded. Well, some train operators today have asked passengers not to travel because of high winds and flooding. Environment agencies have also issued hundreds of alerts for flooding across the UK. Now, a lorry set on fire on the motorway when high winds caused it to crash. Lancashire police confirmed the HGV hit a bridge and burst into flames on the M6. The driver escaped and is currently being assessed at hospital. In international news now, the US President Joe Biden has agreed in principle to talks with Vladimir Putin as long as Russia holds off on any plans to invade Ukraine. The Kremlin says the two leaders could meet in person or talk on the phone, but there are no concrete plans in place yet. Prime Minister Boris Johnson says this week will be crucial for democracy. Associate Fellow with the Russia-Eurasia programme at Chatham House, Samantha de Burnden, stressed the importance of talks between Russia and the West.
For any more talks to be effective, the format of the talks will have to be widened to have the US included, maybe even the UK, which has been notably absent from the high-level discussions here. Talks would probably have to be accompanied by an agreement for some kind of independent peacekeeping force, whether this is in a UN peacekeeping force or an OSCE peacekeeping force.
Australia welcomes tourists back today after nearly 2 years. Vaccinated travellers can now travel to the country after some of the world's strictest pandemic measures have been lifted. Australian citizens and international students were allowed to return down under from November last year, but most tourists had to wait. Well, travel editor at The Independent, Simon Calder, has made the journey to Australia and says there were no tourists on his flight to Sydney and that paperwork might be putting people off visiting.
I had to fill in an incredibly complicated form. I had to be double jabbed. I had to take a lateral flow test in the 24 hours before getting on board. Really tough stuff. They desperately need us back. It's a question of whether, having had that big keep out sign for a couple of years, people have kind of forgotten about Australia.
There's a new drive to try to help uncover Britain's working class history. Historic England have announced that local communities can apply for grants of up to £25,000 to fund research. Well, the aim is to look into everyday history in places like railways, council estates and pubs. The project is the first of a series planned for the next 3 years, exploring the diversity of England's heritage. You're now up to date here on GB News. I'll bring you more as it happens. Let's return, though, now to the point.
Good morning, everyone. This is To The Point on GB News with me, Patrick Christys, and Mercy Muroki on your TV, radio and online. We're here for another hour, bringing you the day's top stories and lots of discussion. So here's what's coming up.
Yes, a British expat in Lviv gives us the latest from Ukraine, where the situation remains tense for Brits abroad. The United States has reported that Russia is planning a full-scale invasion. We'll bring you the latest on the evacuation efforts and procedures for British citizens and their families.
Prime Minister Boris Johnson is set to scrap all remaining COVID restrictions, saying it's officially time that we live with the virus. Our political correspondent Tom Harwood will join us to discuss whether this plan has the public's or Boris's best interest in mind, but also there's a little bit of other news to bring you as well, but we'll leave you hanging on that one for a sec.
Yes, and finally, we've already had Storm Dudley and Storm Eunice wreak havoc on the UK this past week, but now Storm Franklin moves in to further disrupt transport, flood houses and cut power lines. Well, our regional reporters in Northern Ireland and Hertfordshire will give us the very latest.
Yeah, we have all of that coming up and much, much more across the programme. You can get in touch, as loads of you have been, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Keep it coming.
Now, US President Joe Biden and Prime Minister Boris Johnson have both continued to insist that a diplomatic solution to the Ukraine crisis is possible. Yesterday, US and Russian officials agreed in principle to attend a summit to defuse Ukrainian tensions. But can peace really be achieved?
Well, Thomas Jones is a British expat in Ukraine, and he joins us now. There he is. Thank you very much. To give us more information about Brits in the country. Now, just talk to us a bit about your situation, please. Why haven't you left?
OK, well, I haven't left for the simple reason that my wife is Ukrainian. It's easy for me to go. I could leave within the next hour. The process of getting her the documentation and the visa takes some time. It's not easy. It's not easy for her to get these documents. I think they will be fast-tracked. The fee has been waived very nicely by the Home Secretary, but logistically and bureaucratically, it's not that easy.
And what are those barriers in place at the moment? Because you say the British government has waived the fees, so what are the other barriers that remain there for you?
Okay, the barriers are that, as you may know, most of the embassies, American and US and maybe others, have moved from Kiev to Lviv. Now, for me to take my wife to present her documents to an agency, which is, I suppose it's outsourced by the immigration office, we have to go to Kiev. Now, Kiev is going to be a hot zone if war happens. What I don't understand is why we would have to put ourselves in danger's way or, cut ourselves short to go to Kiev when the embassy is in Lviv. It's a 6-hour train or 7-hour drive from Lviv. It's not just me. It's other people around the country, other Brits in the country are much further away. And for them to leave their homes to go to Kiev to submit documents in this moment is not too good.
No, I can see that. Talk to us a little bit about the mood on the ground. I mean, this has been building up and up and up and up, hasn't it? How's it actually been for you and for other people that are out there at the moment?
Well, Ukrainians are very resilient people. This has been going on and off since 2014, since the annexation of Crimea and also the occupation in the east part of Ukraine. So it's kind of become everyday life. The threat of war, for anyone or for any country is not that good. But I'd say that the Ukrainian as a people's, are pretty together, remaining positive. And we all hope that nothing happens. They're very grateful for the help they've had from the international community, from England, from America. I've noticed in Lviv, British military here that come and train Ukrainians. I've seen them, I've spoken to them. It's a great place, and we're very grateful for this. It's just a very worrying moment for everyone right now, and we're trying to keep it together.
And what have you made of the response from the global community, the diplomatic community, particularly Boris Johnson and Joe Biden? Because, of course, those two are at the very forefront of leading the NATO allies.
Yeah, I mean, our neighbours Poland as well have stepped in, and of course, it's constant news, sanctions, and serious talks going on. I think it's very good as a point of view on the diplomatic front, and it's appreciated. It's needed. Something needs to be done, and Ukraine needs to someone to have their back, basically.
Is there a very real... I think it's a tricky one, really, because when all this kind of first came back into prominence, I think for a while I was, I think like many others, probably a bit guilty of thinking it's this quite far away place and it'll de-escalate and nothing. And actually, it seems to be getting closer and closer to the real thing. Do you think that actually there's a very realistic possibility in your mind, genuinely, that there could be a full-scale war?
It's looking like that. If we look at media, we look at, I look at things like Flight Tracker 24, and I can see a lot of drone activity going on around East Ukraine. US drones being flown in from Sicily that circle Ukraine. I can see that people are tense. The military are moving. You see more military on the street. I live near a military academy. There's a big base outside of Lviv. So things are going on and not looking good.
OK. If you had a message now, if Boris Johnson and Priti Patel were watching this now, what would you say?
I'd say thanks for your help, and on behalf of the Ukrainian people, thanks for your help, thanks for the weaponry, thanks for the the military support and the diplomatic support. If you'd like to help the British community here to speed up the process so they can get their nearest and dearest out, that's not just about me. It runs more to other Brits that are less fortunate than myself. If you could help speed that up, it would be great. Would be most appreciative of that as well.
Well, look, thank you very much, and good luck to you, obviously, and your family. I know that we all are with you very much, and obviously, hopefully, we can go back to you again at some point in the future, and you can keep us updated on what's going on. Thank you very much. So that was Thomas Jones, who's a British expat in Ukraine, and I mean, it's scary stuff, isn't it?
It is scary hearing about that very real prospect of that war. I mean, obviously it's been said for a week that it was impending, but I think now it does seem that we are getting to that point, doesn't it? But to keep all your thoughts coming into us, GB Views at gbnews.uk. But for now, union bosses have warned the government that charging for COVID tests would be an act of madness in the middle of a cost of living crisis. The Prime Minister is planning to publish his Living with COVID plans this week, which could scrap the free lateral flow test scheme in England.
Well, the Trades Union Congress have urged the PM to put public health, not internal Tory party politics, first. Our political correspondent Tom Harwood joins us now. Tom, look, I mean, this is a good thing, isn't it, scrapping all the COVID rules and regs?
Well, this is what Conservative backbench MPs have been agitating for. It's what the government said would be happening quite some time ago. This was all part of a roadmap, but it, of course, has been brought forward by about a month. Now, some people are claiming that's because the data looks particularly good, the number of cases, the number of hospitalisations, the number of people particularly in ICU, and the number of deaths all coming down in a positive way. On the other hand, some people allege that the government is acting out of political pressure rather than the science and the data, given we know the weakened position of this Prime Minister and feeling like he needs to give stuff to his backbenchers. However, there's been a slight development this morning from what was going on pretty smoothly over the weekend. The cabinet meeting that was meant to take place this morning has been delayed. At short notice, ministers were told it's not going ahead, and from what it seems like, it looks like there's a bit of a row developing between the Chancellor and the Health Secretary, Rishi versus Saj, potentially over the cost of this continuing COVID surveillance infrastructure. So we know that legal requirements are going to be going. We know that guidance will be there instead of the legal requirement to self-isolate, for example. The question is how much surveillance continues? How long will testing be provided at the taxpayer's expense? And how much of this ONS random swabbing to sort of realise how much COVID there is in the country at large, how much of that will continue? And it looks like the Health Secretary seems to want more of it, and the Chancellor, who has to pay for it all, seems to want less of it.
Wow, OK, so this is but a potential rift here right at the very heart of government, essentially. How do you see this one panning out? I mean, who will normally win out in a situation like this? Presumably the Chancellor.
Well, it's very hard to say because, of course, normally the Prime Minister would be there as the strong figure to make that judgment call. But we know that the Prime Minister has been significantly weakened, and potentially there are some power bases outside of number 10 that might well do well out of a row. So it's hard to know where it will come down. Of course, there are plenty of people who think that maybe things are moving a little bit too quickly. The Labour Party, for example, is saying that free testing, quote-unquote free testing, of course, not free, paid for by the taxpayer, so the tune of billions upon billions of pounds. The question is, will the PCRs for free stay? Will the lateral flow tests for free stay? The lateral flow tests in the first year of the programme cost upwards of £9 billion. And that's before they started being sent out in the numbers that they've been sent out over this year. So really, there are some considerable sums of money here. But the question is, how quickly will it be wound down? What will the taper look like? And which bits will be retained? That seems to be a very real row, although sources within Number 10 have told some journalists this morning that this is a delay, not a cancellation of the Cabinet meeting. And so this is likely to still go ahead today, but just a little later than we were all thinking.
It must have been a relatively recent development because there was footage, I've been told, of people walking into Downing Street, members of the Cabinet, and then obviously walking back out again.
Well, certainly we know that there were some ministers who were ready inside Number 10 for that meeting.
Got all their briefing notes.
Suddenly told that it's not happening. We don't know if they've walked out again, if they're still waiting, how hopeful they are that the meeting will take place in the next few minutes, or if they'll be sheepishly waiting around for hours. Perhaps they'll take one of the less conspicuous exit routes from Number 10. Of course, you can leave by the back rather than the front if you want to avoid all of those nasty cameras.
You don't have to carry a box full of your possessions with you either, do you? There you go. Tom, thank you very, very much. Tom Harwood there, of course, our political correspondent. So, a good old row. Good old row right at the heart of government. You love to see it.
It's almost as if people are trying to assert themselves pending a potential leadership election at some point.
Anyway, right, OK, views. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Lots of you getting in touch. Thank you very, very much. Let's have a look at what Philip's had to say. Apart from the human tragedy, what are the repercussions for us in the UK? This is regarding Ukraine. Will there be fuel shortages, food shortages, cyber attacks? Communications, etc. Well, probably, yes.
Yeah, well, that's the issue. Our Home and Security editor, Mark White, was with us last week, and he made the point that actually, yes, people in the UK should care because there will be an impact on fuel, particularly in Europe, who are much more reliant on Russian gas. And if there's a shortage there, then obviously everybody's going to be trying to get out of a smaller pot. So there will be repercussions, but that is yet to be seen, the scale of those. David got in touch and he says, in relation to the O2 Arena roof being ripped off by storm units.
Torn asunder.
We did show pictures earlier, but for our listeners, you can just go on online and search that. That's what happens when you make the O2 roof out of bed sheets.
Yeah.
And that's what it did get me wondering, what is it made out of? And I can tell you. I can now tell you. It's apparently made out of 200,000 metres squared of shear fill architectural membrane, which means nothing to me at all. But apparently it's made out of fiberglass and polytetrafluoroethylene. I
think you did pretty well with that. Yeah, well done. Well done. Well, apparently it's going to reopen, I think it was, whatever, I don't know, next month. Oh, Friday. There you go, it was quick. Oh, well. Anyway, after the break, a third named storm hits the UK. Storm Franklin brings more power cuts and travel disruptions with flooding, prompting evacuations in part of the UK as well. We'll be live in Northern Ireland and in Hertfordshire. Stay tuned.
Hello. Storm Franklin is clearing away, but we do still have a Met Office yellow warning in place until the early afternoon. Still very windy out there and still the potential for damaging gusts through the late morning, early afternoon. There is that storm system starting to ebb away and the isobars just slowly opening out. So the winds will continue to ease through the rest of today, but it's still going to be a very windy day. For many, it'll be bright out there this afternoon. Quite a bit of cloud over the Midlands, East Anglia through the early afternoon. A few showers likely here, but otherwise it is mostly dry and many places seeing sunny spells. But it is still windy. Those winds just continuing to ease down a little bit through the afternoon. Temperature-wise, double digits for many across England and Wales, and even further north, above average across Scotland. But obviously, it doesn't feel that mild because it is still very windy. As the winds ease off further, we could see some pockets of frost across northeast Scotland. Turns quite chilly across eastern England overnight with clear skies, but the next set of weather fronts will move in from the west, bringing rain and drizzle, and eventually they'll start to lift the temperatures. So certainly in the west, we're well above freezing by dawn, but some more heavy rain and strong winds come into western Scotland in the morning. That rain will spread southwards, could be very heavy for a time across northwest England, North Wales, particularly through Tuesday morning's rush hour. That band of rain kind of eases off as it spreads southwards, so a spell of damp weather for the Midlands and then East Anglia in the southeast through the early afternoon before skies start to brighten and we see sunny spells. A few showers across western Scotland, in particular over the hills. There will be of snow here, but again, for many it turns quite bright, but still quite breezy in the afternoon. Through Tuesday evening, we'll see a few more of those showers coming into Northern Ireland, northwest England, particularly western Scotland, with more snow on the hills. Clearer spells further south, and the weather continuing to chop and change this week. It'll often be windy, but not as stormy. There'll be spells of rain, but also most of us will see some sunnier days as well. Goodbye.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
My name's Tom Harwood, and every weekday we bring you The Briefing live from 9:30 a.m. The stories, analysis, and live debate that you need to hear.
Quite right, Tom, of course.
Was this something that had been considered at all?
Difficult to answer.
Gas-guzzling helicopters circling. Noise is being made here.
Joe Biden walking out. Thank you very much for joining us. Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, Monday to Friday, 9:30 a.m. on GB News.
Join me, Gloria De Piero, Monday to Thursday at noon for The Briefing. We go to the parts of Parliament that you won't see elsewhere. Plus, there's exclusive interviews with MPs from all parties. But quite often, they paper over the real truth. Why does a working class lad like you join the Tories?
That's a good question.
Don't miss it. Monday to Thursdays at noon on GB News.
Good morning, it's 11:25 and this is To The Point with me, Mercy Muroki and Patrick Christys on GB News, live on your TV and radio this morning. Why are you looking at me and smiling?
Made some strange noises just before we came back there.
I was trying to swallow the packet of crisps I was eating in break.
That explains a lot anyway.
Yes.
Carry on.
Yes, well, we've already had 2 storms this week in Storm Deadly and Storm Eunice, but Storm Franklin is here, causing even more power cuts, transport disruptions and flooding in parts of the UK.
Well, the Met Office has issued an amber wind warning for Northern Ireland, while danger to life flood warnings have also been issued in Greater Manchester. A record 1.4 million homes were left without power as a result of Storm Eunice. So how much worse is this going to get? We can go back now to hopefully an as yet non-hypothermic Northern Ireland reporter, Dougie Beattie. And he's there. He is. Good stuff. How are you getting on?
Well, I'm not hypothermic just yet, Patrick, but I am getting there. I'm trying to move around the harbour so as I don't get blown away. I'm now on a public slipway, and I'm looking forward to getting a fry up in the cafe up the road. But yes, I'm in the little seaside town of Donaghadee in County Down, just on the east coast of the Ards Peninsula. Port Patrick lies about 15 miles to my left in Scotland, and it has been a horrendous night in Northern Ireland. The storm made land just after midnight in the west coast of Ireland in around Donegal. It moved in and doing most of the damage to Fermanagh, Tyrone and Derry. In Oma they have had pumps going flat out to try and stop major flooding in the rivers. There's about 300 incidents of trees down and floods. So a lot of damage done there commercially as well, the premises, and that will tell on our insurance bills next year. And there was up to 10,000 homes without power, but the electricity service in Ireland and Scotland are very good at getting power back on, and that's now down to about 4,500 homes without power. So we did get away with the first 2 storms very lightly, but this one not so much.
Do we have anything at the moment in terms of when we can actually expect to get back to some normality when the storm is expected to pass?
Well, we thought it had passed us this morning. It said we were actually, the amber warning was dropped at 7 o'clock. It's gone to a yellow warning. But if anything, I believe here the winds are picking up, and the only thing I can think of that is that, you know, as the first wave of the storm hits us, we go into the lull in the eye, and this must be the tail of the storm now catching us, and it's probably well on its way across the Irish Sea into the north of England.
Indeed. Look, Dougie, thank you very, very much. Great to have you on the show, and I hope you do get that fry up very, very shortly, actually. You deserve it. You deserve it. Have one for me as well. Good stuff. Dougie Beattie there in Northern Ireland. It's back-to-back-to-back storms. And also it's important as well to know, I think this has gone largely underreported, I would say, as well, around the country so far, about what's going on in Greater Manchester at the minute, specifically around the Didsbury area, actually. Thousands of people there being told they're potentially going to have to evacuate their homes. In fact, they have had to evacuate their homes. It's the River Mersey there. And that thing bursts its banks pretty much once a year anyway, so goodness only knows what it must be like at the moment. We wish those people well, of course, so, you know, stay safe, everyone.
Yes, indeed. Well, let's go to some of your views. Chris has got in touch. We spoke earlier about an anecdote I had about a student at university when I began university, assuming I would be a Remainer, and I am not necessarily a Remainer. Chris has said, my son at university during the EU referendum, when asked how he was voting, he told them he's voting for democracy at the ballot box, e.g. Brexit, and was slated for being a Brexiteer.
Yeah, classic, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a horrible environment, I think, for students who don't necessarily subscribe to left-wing / woke, whatever you want to call it, those sorts of views. For students who don't, at the moment, it's not a very good climate, because I even remember on one of my first lectures in my second year of universities, meet this new professor, and he was walking around the class just meeting everybody whilst we were all working, and he said, oh, how are you? And he asked my political views, and I said I was a Conservative, and he was like, oh, don't worry, we'll sort that out by the end of the year. Sort of in jest, but given that he was a self-proclaimed communist, I mean, I got the message loud and clear. So if it was a student who was perhaps a bit more timid about their views than I would be, they'd be scared into admitting what they believe.
But also for a lot of people, well, most people aren't, you know, working in the world of politics or in media or things like that, where you're confronted every single day by news stories, and you have to ask yourself a bit, what do I actually feel about this kind of thing? Most people just, work in accounts somewhere, or they're a teacher or whatever, I don't know. And so actually, they might not be as forthcoming with the idea of actually, I do believe in Brexit. And it is quite an intimidating climate. We've had Michael get in touch, or similar lines to your previous comment there, saying, well done for you for calling out what some Remainers can be like. I believe that many Remainers are in denial of the fact that we've left the EU and will never rejoin. So we need to give them time, essentially, to finally come to terms with it. I mean, it's not just kind of people at universities and things like that. I had one very, very good friend who I've been mates with since I was like 3 years old, who was shocked when he found out I voted for Brexit and was like just angry with me. Actually angry. What's it got to do with him,
Yeah, I know. It's the vitriol that took place, isn't it? It was very incredibly unnecessarily divisive. I personally couldn't care less whether people I know voted Remain or Brexit. But certainly there were a lot of people who it was a breaking point. And there's still people to this day who say, I wouldn't be friends with a Brexiteer, or I wouldn't date a Brexiteer. Funnily enough, though, it's never often the other way around. It's never Brexiteers saying, I hate Remainers. I wouldn't be friends or marry a Remainer.
No, it's funny that, isn't it? It's funny that. I like those people who always wear those shirts as well, never kissed a Tory. I mean, they usually look like people that no one wants to kiss anyway. After the break, we'll be discussing the SNP's radical new national guidelines that forbid teachers from telling parents whether or not their child is engaging in underage sexual activities. Gosh, but before that, we'll take a look at this morning's news.
Good morning, it's 11:32. I'm Rosie Wright, here to keep you up to date on GB News. Now, the Prime Minister has postponed a cabinet meeting where he was going to present the government's Living with COVID plan. It's expected that all remaining domestic COVID regulations will end this week in England. The Prime Minister says scrapping the requirement to self-isolate in England will bring the country towards a return to normality. Union leaders have criticised potential government plans to charge for COVID tests, calling it an act of madness. The TUC is urging the Prime Minister to put public health first ahead of internal party politics. They claim it will disproportionately hit frontline and low-paid workers during a time when cost of living is on the rise. In other news now, transport networks across parts of the UK are suffering further delays as Storm Franklin hits the country. Yellow weather warnings are in place across most of the UK. Some train operators have asked passengers not to travel today because of high winds and extreme weather. Environment agencies have also issued hundreds of alerts for flooding across the UK. In international news, the US President Joe Biden has agreed in principle to talks with Vladimir Putin as long as Russia holds off on any plans to invade Ukraine. The Kremlin says the two leaders can meet in person or talk on the phone, but there are no concrete plans in place yet. The Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, says this week will be crucial for democracy. Donald Trump has launched a new social media app called Truth Social. The new US-based networking site says it's free from political discrimination. The former president has launched Truth Social, having been banned from mainstream social media platforms. Twitter said the president was permanently suspended due to the risk of further incitement of violence following the attack on the US Capitol in January last year. You're now up to date here on GB News, but on your TV, online and DAB Plus radio. Shortly, we'll be back to the point.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel.
Right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, everybody. It's 11:36. This is To The Point with me, Patrick Christys, and Mercy Muroki on GB News. We're live on your TV, radio and online.
Yes, now the Scottish Government has told teachers to practice confidentiality when it comes to the sexual activity of their pupils, imploring them not to tell parents whether or not their child is engaging in underage sexual activity. Social workers and police officers have also been told not to inform the parents of children as young as 13 years old of their child's sexual activities.
Well, family campaigners have said the SNP's guidance effectively lowers the age of consent in Scotland, whereas the Scottish Catholic Church say the new guidance are morally bankrupt. Well, Caroline Farrow is the campaign director of UK and Ireland at Citizen Go, a socially conservative advocacy group. What are your views on this? Because I can see both sides of it, really. I mean, part of me thinks that the parents should be made aware, certainly if it seems like there's something sinister going on. But then at the other side of it as well, if, like, you know, should a teacher really be calling your parents if they suspect that you're kissing one of your classmates, you know?
It's the SNP showing us exactly who they are. This is horrifying. This is, as the Catholic Church has said, this is morally bankrupt. It's a groomer's charter. This is... Let's think about the emotional maturity of a 13-year-old. This is lowering the age of consent by default and without any kind of parliamentary legislation or consensus or agreement. 13-year-olds cannot consent to sex. They legally can't. You think of where a 13-year-old is. Most 13-year-olds are emotionally, particularly girls. They may not have started their periods. They have no concept of what a respectful, loving, sexual relationship should look like. And if they are having sex, it's because they have been persuaded into it. And if as a teacher you discover that one of your pupils is in a sexual relationship, of course you have a duty to inform the parents. And of course the parents have a right to know. You know, we as parents know our children better than anybody else. And, you know, I would be so concerned if I were to discover that one of my 13-year-olds, you know, was having sex. Of course, you know, as a parent, our duty is to look after and to protect our children. We are the first port of call. We are the primary caregivers. And the Scottish Government are saying, we don't respect you. Your opinion doesn't matter.
Well, the Scottish Government as well wouldn't tell you if your child wanted to change gender. I mean, that's another thing that they're doing at the moment, isn't it? Where, actually, in fact, I think we might have spoken about this before, actually, where, you know, at the moment, if a child, I mean, very young, even, you know, 11 years old, comes into school and goes, I now want to be known as whatever, I identify as something else. The school are under no obligation to tell the parents whatsoever. And it's almost like the SNP are trying to remove the role of parents.
That's exactly what they're doing. They are trying to act as state guardians, and they're trying to say, we know better than the parents. And we know, you know, you talk about gender reassignment or, you know, gender ideology and a child thinking that they identify as a member of the opposite sex. We know that when this happens, children get put onto a pathway. So they get kind of this social affirmation, then they get, you know, sent to a gender identity clinic where there are all sorts of issues about safeguarding, about, you know, putting children directly onto puberty blockers, which are not reversible, by the way. And we know that well over 99% of children who go onto puberty blockers then go onto cross-sex hormones. Children are simply not capable of making these life-altering decisions at such a young age. You know, we know that we don't reach full emotional maturity until about the age of 25. You know, our brains and our bodies are still growing. And whether it's to do with, you know, putting children on a, you know, gender reassignment pathway or having sex, you know, these are things that pose physical risks to children. You know, with sex, there's a risk of unwanted or unplanned pregnancy. There's a risk of sexually transmitted infections, which, by the way, in adolescence, the rates are absolutely skyrocketing. You know, parents are best placed to know what is in their children's best interests and to keep their children safe. We all know from our own children that, you know, children are at very different emotional stages. But by and large, just think of where a 13-year-old is. You know, they've just started year 8. They've done 1 year of secondary school. They're just getting used to their bodies changing and what it's like to sort of be for your body to mature sexually. So they're just not in any place.
I do think it's very naive to think 13-year-olds up and down the country, though, aren't very much sexually active. I think that you'd be surprised how widespread that actually is. And what I did want to ask, I do want to play devil's advocate a tiny bit and say, if I'm a parent, my daughter's 7 years old, so absolutely completely inappropriate for any sexual activity to be taking place there, of course. But eventually, I accept as a parent, she will when she's a teenager and perhaps even older than that. And I just think if my child is hiding that kind of thing from me, if I've created an environment where a child can't be open about, you know, whether they have a boyfriend at school, whether they've shared a kiss with their boyfriend at school with me, but their teacher knows about it, I would take that as a bit of a failure on my part as a parent to not provide that environment for my child. And there are some children who grow up in households, particularly very religious households, who, if their teachers were to tell their parents, they would be in quite a lot of trouble.
Well, I think you're conflating a few different issues here. I mean, so the legal age of consent is 16, and that is, you know, to protect children and to protect young people. Now, there's a world of difference between sharing a kiss with somebody and actually having full-blown sexual relations. And of course, you know, as a parent, actually, there are boundaries. You know, as a parent, you know, I don't actually want to know what my children may or may get up to sexually when they're old enough and of an age to consent. And of course, I think you're right, Mercy. I do think that as parents, it's beholden on us to keep the conversation open all the time. So we don't sit down and have the talk with children. We talk about, you know, sex and puberty and these things. You keep the conversation open. And as a parent, you let your child know that you'll always be there for them, that no subject is off limits and taboo. But actually, if a child doesn't want to tell you that they're having sex, it's probably because deep down, they know that they shouldn't be doing it, that there's a conscience, you know, their conscience.
Or maybe they're a bit embarrassed, you know. I'm probably a bit embarrassed. I mean, I get I absolutely take what you mean, and you know, I agree with it. I just think as well, you know, they might be a bit embarrassed. But just lastly as well, I'd just like to say, I think it's important that schools maybe do tell parents about this stuff, because actually, I don't think we need to be, or we should be, putting all of the responsibility for children's sexual education in the hands of someone who's, you know, I was taught sex ed by a bloke called Dr. McDonald, who wore socks and sandals every single day. And, you know, with the greatest of respect, I'm not convinced Dr. McDonald was that clued up about all birds and the bees, you know. So potentially it's better for parents to do it so you know it's done properly.
Yeah, and I also think as well, sex education is one of those topics that's very, very subjective. We will all have slightly different views on it, and that's fine. But we also want to make sure that, you know, our children kind of understand where we're coming from, and we as parents, it's our role to keep our children safe. And therefore, if a 13-year-old is having sex, then clearly they are putting themselves at risk. And you ask, have the SNP, have the Scottish Government not learned anything from the grooming scandals, because what we learned there, particularly in the serious case reviews, is that, you know, children who were being systematically raped by gangs of men, when the social workers became aware of this, they weren't telling the parents because they were thinking, oh, well, they're old enough to consent. And so many opportunities to intervene and stop this grooming and stop this abuse were missed because it was thought, oh, well, children can consent. So there is a major red flag going up here. And I think yes, parents do have a duty to know because it's our role. We know our children best, and it's only us who can really keep our children safe.
Absolutely. Well, look, thank you very much. Great to have you on the show, as always. Caroline Farrow there is the campaign director for the UK and Ireland at Citizen Go, which is a socially conservative advocacy group, reporting for us there on the fact that in Scotland, anyway, teachers are not...
I am curious in what situation a teacher would even know about your child's sexual activity anyway. I mean, I don't remember any teacher being aware of any of my peers were doing sexually. So
no, that's true.
It's curious to know what would actually be happening in the first place for a teacher to be aware of that. It just seems like it's not
It's a strange one, really, isn't it? 'Cause
situation.
maybe you'd get in trouble if you were caught doing something at school, for example. So then you'd get in trouble for it. You'd possibly get suspended, but they wouldn't tell your parents what it was you get suspended for. Strange. Anyway, right, as we discussed earlier, following my monologue, a barnstorming one it was, our cash-strapped NHS has spent thousands of pounds on rainbow-coloured LGBTQ+ friendly pedestrian crossings. I mean, I can imagine an unfriendly pedestrian crossing. You walk over, it just shouts a homophobic slur at you as you pass. But anyway, Salisbury NHS Foundation Trust in Wiltshire, for example, spent £11,000 on 4 of these rainbow crossings, and South West Yorkshire paid £5,000 for 9, so they got a better deal, didn't they?
Yes, well, Sherwood Forest Hospital's NHS Trust in Nottinghamshire, who spent nearly £3,000 repainting a crossing last year, said the crossing was, quote, the latest addition to the Trust's equality and diversity and inclusion agenda.
Well, Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Dr David Bull, joins us now, I believe. There you... Oh, no, that's not Dr David Bull. Anyway, hopefully we'll go to Dr David Bull very shortly. But yeah, anyway, look, obviously to see what his view is.
Yeah. In the meantime, can we get that picture back of the rainbow?
Hey.
Oh, there he is.
Oh, there he is.
There he is.
Good. You. I thought you transitioned for a second then, but anyway.
I was going to say that certainly wasn't me. I was looking at the monitor and that isn't me. No.
Well, there you go. Right. What do you make of this, David?
Well, I mean, what do you think I'm going to say? It's shameful, it's shocking, it's disgusting. £46,000 of your money, taxpayer money, being spent on this. And actually, if you think about it, in the broadest sense, you know, the budget for the NHS is something like, when I last look, 176 billion, and we've added another 36 billion. So you might say £46,000 is not a great deal of money. But my grandmother had a great adage: look after the pennies and the pounds will look after themselves. We've got 6 million people waiting for elective procedures. Nurses are not being paid enough. We don't have enough nurses. We don't have enough doctors. The waiting lists are spiralling out of control. And let me just ask you one quick question. If you are a member of the LGBT community and you have central crushing chest pain, are you less likely to go to the hospital if there is not a rainbow crossing? Exactly. Answer, no.
Oh, exactly that. I was going to say, you know, the idea that a gay man who's having a heart attack will in any way be feeling refreshed by the fact that as he's being wheeled into intensive care, there's a rainbow flag on the floor. I mean, come on, it's just nuts, isn't it, really?
Well, it is nuts. And I think actually it shows a bigger problem, which is a lack of accountability. You know, at the end of the day, this is our money. We fund the NHS. And the problem is that the NHS is probably the most loved healthcare system in the world. But is it the best managed? And the answer is, quite frankly, no. And when you and I think the problem is the minute you start to criticise the NHS, you're held up as a heretic. And I think we really have to be careful where we're spending this money. And I think the problem is now you've got these self-governing trusts. They can decide where they spend that money. Now, I think that money should go directly into patient care. If you look at the latest figures, 374 managers in the NHS earn more than the Prime Minister. That cannot be right.
All of this, actually, what it's achieving, we mentioned what it's not achieving, but do you think what it is achieving is actually being counterproductive, putting people off the cause, putting people off these equality and diversity causes? Because lots of our viewers and listeners have been in touch saying, stop shoving this down my throat. I'm not transphobic, but just I don't want to hear it anymore.
It's everywhere, isn't it?
Well, I do agree with that. You know, the fact is that your sexual orientation is irrelevant. The fact is every person should be treated exactly the same. You know, we don't have symbols for straight people, for example. I have a major problem with all of this. And actually, one of the biggest problems is that I think whilst it's really important to talk about inclusivity, many of these hospital trusts have just gone too far. Perhaps I could ask you another question. Why are we paying the average midwife $30,000 and trusts are advertising for diversity managers at $70,000? That's simply not right.
No, it's not right. And also, as well, there was a hospital trust when I was working up as a local reporter up in Cumbria, where the execs of that trust and the chiefs got their parking expensed, right? So the hospital parking. But actually, some nurses had to pay for it themselves, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, you know, the fact is, why would you want to work in the health service if you have to pay for your parking? It's little things like that actually would be a much better use of money. I think the problem is, talking to many of my friends who are clinicians, doctors, nurses, and so on in the NHS, they just feel incredibly unloved. Yeah. They feel the management is against them. They feel that there is no support. And what we should be doing is actually training more doctors, training more nurses, making sure it does become a vocation once again. And one of the other problems that I have with this is that I think the money would be better spent training or at least reimbursing those people from poorer backgrounds who at the moment cannot afford to go to medical school. And they would make great doctors.
I'd look at waiving some student fees for certain elements of the medical community, you know. Go into it, they don't need to be saddled with a lifetime of debt. We need them to save lives, you know.
Exactly right. And Reform UK has a policy on this, which is, we believe very passionately, that if you stay in the NHS, whilst you have to fund your student debt, once you're in the health service and you commit for a set period of years, then that money should be refundable to you. So that way we would actually keep people within the NHS. One of the biggest problems is that we're training people at taxpayers' expense, and then they think, well, actually, the system is so dreadful, I'm going to go into private medicine. And that is a terrible waste of our time, resources, and money. And so I'd be really keen to ensure that we have the best and the brightest people from all backgrounds, actually, because if you grow up in poverty, you really do understand what it's like to struggle. And I think that would make you a very, very good clinician.
Yeah, good stuff. Look, just a quick one. Sorry, a bit off topic this, but I've always wanted to ask you this because you come on the show quite regularly. Is that your back garden? Because it's massive.
It might be. I live on a farm.
Lovely stuff. Well, it looks like
no flag.
No flag, no. No, it looks lovely. It looks lovely, even with the bad weather. Thank you very much, Dr. David Bull, Deputy Leader of Reform UK. Good stuff. Right, OK, well, here are some of the headlines that you might have missed. This is, of course, in other news.
Yes, 31-year-old music entrepreneur and MBE recipient Jamal Edwards has died at the age of 31. His family say from a sudden illness. He founded SBTV at the age of 15, which was an online media platform to discover emerging artists. He helped launch the careers of musicians Emily Sandé, Dave, Ed Sheeran and Jessie J, to name a few.
Well, he received an MBE at the age of just 23 for his services to music and was the Prince's Trust Ambassador. In 2021, he set up Jamal Edwards Delve, which was a project aimed to refurbish and reopen youth centres. Goodness me, I mean, they need that desperately, don't they? Our heartfelt condolences obviously go to his family and his loved ones.
Yes. Now, a massive UK study has concluded that a diet rich in fresh veg is not enough to prevent heart disease. Good news for children all over the country. Eating at least 5 portions of fruit and vegetables every day is recommended by the NHS, and scientists underline the other health benefits of getting your 5 a day. More importantly, in preventing heart disease, maybe what you choose not to eat, such as fatty foods with high cholesterol.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking about that packet of pork scratches I had earlier on. But anyway, an active exercise regime is also thought to be impactful, while lifestyle choices such as refraining from smoking also play a role. I'm going to be on the way out soon. Anyway, Home Secretary Priti Patel has actually decided as well to approve a ban on harmful and disruptive, this is what she says anyway, anti-vax protesters outside schools and vaccination clinics.
Yeah, this is due to be debated in the Commons next week when the police and sentencing bill returns for further debate. An opposition motion to grant councils the power to take tougher action to dispel anti-vax campaigners was passed by peers in the House of Lords last month. As we were speaking about earlier, very controversial measures there. People are saying, look, you can't chip away at the freedom to protest. It's a slippery slope to go down.
Yeah, that seems to be the overwhelming view of most of you guys, actually. GBviews at gbnews.uk. I think we'll just finish with a couple of your views as well. Some people are pointing out, and they continue to point out, that it looks as though, if I turn my head like this, it looks as though I'm X-raying Mercy. Which I quite like. I think that's quite good fun. Anyway, right. There's some stuff from the inbox there. Anyway, right. So let's finish with a good one.
Phil asks a good question. Can a white person be a diversity officer? Genuine question. And my response to that is yes. I mean, they have to open the application. It's actually illegal to close off applications to people who just based on the colour of their skin. But what I do suspect is they wouldn't be in a rush to give a white person the job. Let's put it that way.
No. Well, I don't think they could. Anyway, I'm gay and I'm appalled. This is not me coming out. This is Nigel's words. By these ridiculous rainbow crossings. Sick of this virtue signalling. End it now, says Nigel. There we go. Well, thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in. I hope it's been a good start to your week. It certainly has been for us here at To The Point. But don't go away, because next is the briefing with the wonderful Gloria De Piero. Stay tuned for that.
Hello. Storm Franklin is clearing away, but we do still have a Met Office yellow warning in place until the early afternoon. Still very windy out there and still the potential for damaging gusts through the late morning, early afternoon. There is that storm system starting to ebb away and the isobars just slowly opening out. So the winds will continue to ease through the rest of today, but it's still going to be a very windy day. For many, it'll be bright out there this afternoon. Quite a bit of cloud over the Midlands, East Anglia through the early afternoon. A few showers likely here, but otherwise it is mostly dry and many places seeing sunny spells. But it is still windy. Those winds just continuing to ease down a little bit through the afternoon. Temperature-wise, double digits for many across England and Wales, and even further north, above average across Scotland. But obviously it doesn't feel that mild because it is still very windy. As the winds ease off further, we could see some pockets of frost across northeast Scotland. Turns quite chilly across eastern England overnight with clear skies, but the next set of weather fronts will move in from the west, bringing rain and drizzle, and eventually they'll start to lift the temperatures. So certainly in the west, we're well above freezing by dawn. But some more heavy rain and strong winds come into western Scotland in the morning. That rain will spread southwards, could be very heavy for a time across northwest England, North Wales, particularly through Tuesday morning's rush hour. That band of rain kind of eases off as it spreads southwards, so a spell of damp weather for the Midlands and then East Anglia and the southeast through the early afternoon before skies start to brighten and we see sunny spells. A few showers across western Scotland, in particular over the hills. There will be of snow here, but again, for many it turns quite bright, but still quite breezy in the afternoon. Through Tuesday evening, we'll see a few more of those showers coming into Northern Ireland, northwest England, particularly western Scotland, with more snow on the hills. Clearer spells further south, and the weather continuing to chop and change this week. It'll often be windy, but not as stormy. There'll be spells of rain, but also most of us will see some sunnier days as well. Goodbye.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.